Hello, everyone. My name is Masashi Iwano. I'm the Festival and Exhibitions Director at CAAM, the Center for Asian American Media. I am so happy to be with you today. This is day 4 of our festival, so I want to thank you all if you've participated in other CAAMFest events. I hope to see you at future events. We still have a whole day today and all of tomorrow, plus all of our on-demand films and events. So I hope you continue to enjoy our festival. You are here for Liwanag, shedding light on Superstore's Mateo and Filipinx-American Portrayals on TV. I want to thank our sponsor and partner, Comcast NBCUniversal, for their continued support. They have been a partner of ours for many years now, bringing so many amazing talent to the Bay Area, to our festival. And when we went to the virtual space, they continue to partner with us. So we want to thank them so much for not only supporting CAAM, but the Asian American creative community. So thank you. There is a question box underneath this player. So if you have questions for this talented group of panelists, please start asking your questions. I get the honor of introducing our moderator. She is an Access Hollywood co-host. Welcome to CAAMFest, the talented Sibley Scoles.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here today, virtually, of course, to host this panel. I hope everyone is ready to join us. We have a lot of exciting and insightful conversations happening today. So let's get right into it. Again, I'm Sibley Scoles. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with some amazing individuals from NBC's hit comedy series, Superstore. We have actor Nico Santos, co-executive producer Rene Gube, and guest director Heather Jack, again for a candid conversation on Filipino portrayals on television and Asian American culture in the media. So it's going to be fun. We're going to have a lot of good things to talk about today. Hello, everyone. How are we doing on this beautiful Saturday?
I'm great. Thriving, winning, all of it.
Yes, that's what I like to hear, thriving and winning. Obviously, there's a lot to cover today. We will be taking questions, so if anyone has anything, please shoot them our way so that I can get them to our wonderful panel. We had just seen a clip from the episode Favoritism. There was an argument in Tagalog between Mateo and Marcus. This isn't the first time that we see characters from the show speaking in Tagalog. How do those moments really make their way into the show, and do we decide that that happens? And Nico, I know obviously you're part of that conversation, but if there's anyone that wants to jump in and decide on how that actually makes its way into the show, Rene or Heather?
Well, you want to jump in there, Nico?
No, you go ahead. Yeah.
Well, this is a story about you. I joined last season, season 5, and Nico and I had known each other through various comedy like scenes and friends and stuff, and so we connected, and we had like a fun conversation about like how exciting it is that I would be the first Filipino writer on the show, and it'd be an opportunity to get more of sort of like Nico's life experiences in the show, some of his like stories with his family and stuff. And so you actually pitched, Nico, like bringing in like a family member or like an aunt or a grandmother figure, and that was sort of the genesis of it.
Nico, go ahead. When you had that conversation and seeing it play out.
Yeah, I think also sometimes I don't realize that the powers that be are listening to these conversations that we're having in the writers' room and on set. I always tend to operate from a place of like, hi, maybe I have a suggestion. If you guys can listen, I have this thing. So it's really great that they are listening to the conversations we're having. The first time Mateo spoke Tagalog on the show was very early in the show's seasons. It was like right at the end of season 1, beginning of season 2. And that certainly wasn't my idea. The creator of the show, Justin Spitzer, wanted to introduce this storyline about Mateo being undocumented. And in that scene, also, he suggested maybe he could speak Filipino. And they actually just sort of like, because we didn't have any Filipino writers in the room at the time, they kind of just like went to Google Translate and was like, this is kind of the gist of what we want him to say. And thankfully I am fluent in Tagalog, and was kind of just like tweaked it a little bit to make it more natural sounding, instead of like Google Translate, this is how Filipino is.
Right.
Nico, did you have to coach John at all during that scene? Was John up on Tagalog? How did that come out? Because he sounded, when I first heard it, I said, oh, he knows what he's talking about.
No, he was definitely like, I gotta speak Tagalog. I don't know what I'm doing. So I recorded it on a voice memo and sent it to him. And any questions that he had, we would just like. But I thought he did pretty great. Like a lot of white people.
Good. Yeah.
Filipino,
the speed with which he delivered is pretty great.
Yeah, I know, right? I was like, Filipino is very fast, and like the consonants, and there's just such a specific rhythm to it. So I'm just like, I felt like I was like a drill sergeant, just like, do it again.
The scene was epic. Obviously I love that we're able to bring that Filipino culture to the television sets out here in the States as well, just for representation. And now, again, Rene, that you're a part of the writing on this, and just being a part of it behind the scenes is definitely great to bring this to life. There's someone asking a question, Jennifer. She says, Superstore is one of my favorite shows. I love the chemistry of the cast. How much is scripted versus improv? Who wants to take that one?
We should both answer, Nico, because I'm sure we have different perspectives from the writer's room and on set. You go first. I'm very curious.
It's all improvised. Like, those are all our words. I don't even know why we have a writer's room. No, I mean, we are given the opportunity to improvise a lot on the show, which is such a blessing. Not every set or show works that way. We really are one of the few lucky ones that we're able to. We do what's called a fun run. So we do the scripted version, and as long as the director and the showrunner and the writer feels like we have the scripted version down, then we are encouraged to do to improvise and do a fun run. And thankfully a lot of it makes it to the show. I think what also helps is that I think from the beginning, all of us in the cast had such strong senses of who these characters really are. So it was very easy to sort of improvise as these characters. Yeah. And I don't know what Rene has to add to that.
I would say that we're very lucky on this show that we get to do fun runs and improvise on set, because we have a cast that is like very funny, very talented. There's a lot of professional comedians on top of being talented actors on the show. So we get a lot of good stuff on set. I would say, like, at the end of the day, you're seeing like 15-20% of the jokes are fully improvised things. That's just me making up comedy math, but like, it's just there's just really funny people on set. So I mean, like, sometimes you'll get a cast, you'll go, let's do a fun run, and you'll be like, oh cool, thanks for the synonyms. But this cast is they've got stuff to sling, and it's really fun to be on set and watch.
Yeah, I want to add, like, the energy when you do a fun run can really like revitalize everyone too. So of course you're getting things from different angles, and repeating the same lines to get the the scripted version down. But it kind of gets everyone's energy back up when you're like, okay, let's do a fun run, and people are going off the cuff or taking things very in a wild direction. I mean, it doesn't always end up in the show, but the stuff that does is great. And sometimes you get like a look or a reaction that you might not have gotten if you didn't try something different. But yeah, it's fun too when you can see the stuff that's like, oh, we didn't plan this, and look how it ended up in the show.
Yeah.
And we appreciate. Heather, we appreciate you sort of indulging our stupidness on set.
No, it's like it's the best. It's like why I love doing comedy, why I love working on the show. It's one of the most fun because you're being surprised all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's nice to hear you guys all enjoying it, and you get to have that relaxing moment too of just being yourself. And if it works, and you run with it. So that's good to know as a viewer. So I was going to get into the origin story of Mateo, and there's a question from Mark. He asks, how much of Mateo's story was known from the beginning, and how much has actually evolved over the season? Nico, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, Mateo's origin story is that he wasn't queer and he wasn't Filipino. He wasn't written as such. He was written as a straight Latino guy, and he was sort of like the original written version of Mateo in the pilot was that he was sort of like this family man. And he was, very hyper competitive, and I just remember reading the sides and the material, thinking like, this person is so shady and just will throw anybody under the bus to get what he wants, and just it really reminded me of all the shady queens that I used to work with in retail, because I used to work retail in San Francisco, all over Union Square, and I was like, this is stuff that I've heard said before. I know who this person is, and I just kind of adapted it to a character that I could I am a little more convincing as a shady queen than I am a Latino.
You went off of experience. You went off of experience.
Exactly.
I'm just finding out about the San Francisco connection. I'm from the Bay Area too. So we probably ran into each other.
I worked. I that's how I started. I started stand up in the Bay Area in San Francisco and worked in Union Square for 8 years. But yeah, that's how I sort of like molded the character to fit more of to tailor to myself, and thankfully the creators and the producers of the show liked it at the audition, and I got a call back, and then I tested, and that was that.
Yeah.
But then as the show sort of went on, like making him undocumented, these were things that the showrunner brought. I mean, I didn't suggest that, and I'm so thankful that Justin thought of creating that twist, because it just added such a necessary element to Mateo's story and informs why he is the way he is, why he's so venomous and acidic and so hyper competitive, because the stakes are just so much higher for him, and it just makes him not this two-dimensional character.
I want to add that, like, I think this is like such an important thing. I'm sure we have a lot of young actors watching today, and so I think this is such an important thing for young actors to know, is that like sometimes you'll get a breakdown for an audition, and I often do this as an actor, like talk myself out of like, oh, I'm not exactly this, I shouldn't go in for this. But what Nico did was he hung on to like what is the core of that character that makes him a story engine, that makes him funny on the show, and that is like that hyper competitive nature, and then just added the Nico to it all, and that allowed him to like be true to himself, become like this fully three-dimensional character, and then that sold it to Justin Spitzer and the rest of the production creative team. And so like, don't talk yourself out of these things, because often writers in Hollywood aren't Filipino, and they're not writing Filipino characters. So you need to sell them that there's another version of this character and it looks like you. And the way to do that is to find the thing that they're trying to do and then inform the rest of it with the stuff that is true for you. And that's what Nico did, and that's why he killed it. And, that's why we're here today. Well, thank you, Nico. Thank you.
That's such great advice.
Yeah.
That's such great advice. Well, thank you for saying that, Rene, first of all. But that is such great advice to anybody who's watching, because I do the same thing every time I get an audition. I'm just like, why am I reading for this? This is like, I get angry sometimes at my agents. I'm like, why are you sending me this crap? I'm not this, but it's true. You just have to, because 99% of the creators out there aren't people of color, aren't Asian, don't belong to the LGBT community. They're not writing for any of our experiences. So it's really sad to say at this point, up to us to sort of tweak it for now, until we can be behind the scenes and create our own stories.
I would say the same is true coming in as a filmmaker, trying to get work. You're finding like the universal commonalities, but also you're bringing what you can specifically to the job. So for me, I think when I first interviewed for Superstore, like I mentioned, like, yes, I'm Filipino, so I understand like where Nico's character is coming from and all of the cousins and all of that. Or like, you know, you're just bringing parts of your own history to a certain job. And I think it makes you more interesting than being like, you know, having something specific to bring to your role.
Absolutely.
Right.
There is a question that I wanted to pop in here for you guys from Jenna Lee. She asks, wanted to talk about the episode on Superstore when Mateo starts a pseudo-activist organization, St. Louis Society Against Duterte, that's a Filipino president, to find a way for him to get asylum. It was so funny. How did that storyline come about?
Well,
Rene?
I can't speak to it because it was before I was on the writing staff. I think that was season
Was it?
3 or 4. Yeah, I think it was 3 or 4. I remember loving that episode. What I can say for the creative process is like you'll notice that like the show takes like kind of rips stories from the headlines and kind of localize them for like what happens in everyday life. And so the challenge there is like finding that comedic spin on a very serious issue without like sort of, you know, bastardizing what is actually very serious and very, you know, has a lot of gravity to it, you know. And so that conversation is always happening in the Superstore writers' room, which I think is part of the fun challenge to it. And so I imagine that was the conversation that was happening when, you know, coming up with a story for it. Like, you know, we have a person that's going to be possibly deported. There are real dangers there. Like, we have to acknowledge the real danger there. Those are the stakes, but like, how do we laugh at that? And so, you know, that's sort of the creative process.
Yeah, it's probably a fine line.
that.
Sorry, Nico.
No, it's good. It is a very fine line. Rene, I didn't realize that you weren't in the writers' room yet. All these episodes are starting to blend in. But the interesting part about that episode too is that I remember reading the table draft for that episode and being just like, oh my God, this is amazing. We're tackling, you know, and discussing this very important issue to all Filipinos, not just Filipinos in the United States, but obviously Filipinos living in the Philippines. But I remember there was some pretty harsh language that Mateo was using to criticize President Duterte. And I was randomly just like telling my mom, like, oh, we're doing an episode. Mateo is very critical of Duterte. And my mom genuinely was just like, what are you saying? Like, and she was really sort of like, can you have them? I had to have a talk with Justin of like, can we just tone down some of the language? Because my mom was genuinely worried that if I had bashed the president of the Philippines to such a degree on American television, that there would be a retaliation attempt, like to my relatives in the Philippines. And I remember talking to Justin, being like, can we just tweak some of these words? Maybe I don't necessarily threaten to end his life or something like that, or I just remember having that conversation. And so we did tweak it, but.
No, I think it's important to have these conversations, especially, again, it is a very fine line. And you mentioned, Rene, challenges that you faced when trying to make sure it is that comedic timing, however, also being careful with, you know, representation. Back in season 2, I want to go back to when we find out Mateo is an undocumented immigrant. What were some of the challenges there that we faced? And then also just continuing on with that story throughout all the seasons and making sure you're telling it the right way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the creative challenges of that is there's the reality that like this person is certainly under this administration, this person would have been deported and they would have left our television show by this point. That's the reality. And so we have to play those real dangers while still hanging on to Nico Santos, the actor that we love so much. And so that's the creative challenge of like playing the real stakes, honoring how that is actually affecting American lives, but also like finding the comedy and not losing our guy. And so it's been ongoing. We've been lucky enough to find a couple real stories along the way. I think my first episode that I wrote on the show was discussing the like sort of explore the difficulties it takes for an undocumented worker without papers to find employment in the States, and like all of like the sort of like underground sort of like, you know, self-starting like business ventures that they need to do to support themselves. And it led to a story where he was being abused by a boss that was sort of taking advantage of the situation. David Wayne, you remember that, Nico?
It was such a great episode. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in that thing, it's like you have to find wacky. We found this act. We were like, we need David Wayne. He's the silliest. He's the funniest. If you are familiar with his work, and then like just find that wacky thing that is able to like get us to the laughter, but also underline the idea that like this is the person that's taking advantage of somebody who is going to be deported. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but like sort of just like walking through it. And other times we just like are the best we can do is like sort of cap it as it affects another story and not do a full bodied story and get into a situation where like our audience would be like, but yo, that dude would be deported now, you know, like we sort of have to dance around it a little.
No, that definitely answers it.
One of the things I like about our show too is that, you know, Mateo can't opt out of being undocumented. It is something that's always going to be, at least for now, just going to be, you know, it's a part of his identity and how he lives through his life. But the great thing about our show too is that it is not always the focus of the episodes. You know, like I think if we had gone through like every episode where it was like about him being undocumented, it's kind of like the same thing about like being Filipino and being gay. Like it's not always the focus of the episode. His identity is never always the focus of the episode, but we do live in a world and in our world of Superstore where we can touch upon those things, and it's always such a delight to sort of just ebb and flow within those parameters.
Yeah.
Heather, this one is for you. In your experience, obviously directing the episodes that you have for Superstore, how do you approach capturing the nuances of Filipino culture in characters like Mateo?
I mean, I think that the nice thing is because there's a Filipino representation in the writer's room, and then of course Nico being Filipino himself, it makes it really easy to collaborate and make sure that the authenticity is there. You know, if you're in a different situation where like you're the only one to kind of represent your culture, you might come in kind of later in the game and you're like, well, this is written this way and I don't think this feels totally right, or you know, you get to set and the actor's like, I wouldn't say this, you know. But it's nice because the way that Superstore is, it's like you have Rene, you have Nico, there's and then if I'm showing up, like I can say, okay, this, I don't know, like prop wouldn't look like this. It doesn't feel like what I remember from childhood or from my experience or something. So you can kind of ensure the authenticity all the way through, which is great on a show like this. And that just speaks to having more people, you know, involved at every stage.
Absolutely. I'll take a couple questions over here. We have one from Jonathan. He says, big fan of Nico. Thank you all for joining us today and sharing your experiences. We've made a lot of progress, but there's so much more that can happen. What do you think has happened for underrepresented communities to not only get token nods in media, but to be the drivers and creators behind the content that we put out?
What needs to happen?
Yeah, well, you know, what needs to happen is that putting people of color, Filipinos, LGBT people, any marginalized person in front of the camera is great, and it does amazing things for representation. But the real change happens when you change the gatekeepers and the people who greenlight these projects and the people who have say. Like that needs to be more diversified. It needs to have more LGBT people, Latinos, Filipinos, different type of Asians, in order for these stories to be really told well and told correctly, and for more stories like ours to be greenlit. Because I can audition 5 times a day till the cows come home, but you know, there's a white person who's in charge who has to say that guy, you know. So it really has to change behind the camera more than that's what's more important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, as somebody who's like been trying to sell a show for the past couple of years, it is you'll notice these moments when like you'll sit in a room and there's a panel of whites, and then like that one Asian face on the other side of the table is usually a junior exec of some type, and they're sort of like desperately like shooting eye contact at you, like, hey, make this go really well, I'll do whatever I can, like, you know. And it's a really icky feeling, you know what I mean? It shouldn't be that way, where it feels like we're trying to like, you know, get people in through the back door. Like, we should be banging down the front doors and doing this thing, right? So I totally agree with Nico. It's not just about in front of the camera, it's behind the camera, it's director seats, it's you know, it's studio execs, it's all of that. Like, we need the voices in those seats. So
yeah, I had been pushing for a Filipino writer on Superstore for a very long time. And you know, Rene, what you just got hired season
five. Yeah.
Season 5, you know, I mean, there's also like the pool is small because we just haven't had the opportunity. You know, if we had been given the opportunity from the beginning, then there would be 100 Filipino writers for us to choose from. But even when it comes to casting relatives of Mateo to play in the show, it is a very small pool of actors that we can we can audition from. So, you know, rising tides lift all ships, as they say. So the more and more everybody sort of like creates and puts, you know, our people in these sort of positions that can open doors, then the more of us can be in the pool.
Yeah.
Heather, did you want to add to that?
I mean, I think just like, I mean, they kind of captured it, but yeah. I mean, it is the decision makers. I think one positive move is that, or one positive thing is, there's so much more content being created, that there are opportunities for, you know, Filipino creators or other marginalized creators to be able to make their own projects and then find an audience for that. Like on Netflix or on streaming, there are more niche audiences finding shows specific to them. And so I think that's an exciting, you know, opportunity. We're seeing more of that, but I still think there's a long way to go. And yeah, just to continue kind of pushing those doors open where we can.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, we have some more questions. A lot of people have questions for you, Nico, in regards to your success and how things have gone. This is from Ulysses. Nico, how do you transition from comedy to TV? How are you discovered? Let's go back there.
Gosh, I had done, you know, I did stand up in San Francisco. That's how I got started. And eventually, after sort of like really being in the SF comedy scene, it was either move to New York or move to LA. Those are the two choices, as I've sort of like plateaued in San Francisco about the work that I can do and what I can accomplish in that city. So I chose LA because it was closer and because I was broke. I didn't have any money. And I had a cousin where I could cash on her couch for free. That's why I chose LA. And you know, I just started doing the rat race in LA, doing auditions and stuff like that. And you know, it's so weird because I had been really sort of doing the stand-up comedy thing for about 10, 11 years already. And then all of a sudden, as I booked like an acting job, it just one job led to another. And, you know, by the time I booked Superstore was my 5th professional acting job. So I really, in terms of making it in Hollywood, like I understand that my success sort of came very fast, because to be able to go from, you know, to book a series regular role on my 2nd pilot season is, you know, I'm very lucky, you know, but I also put in a lot of hard work throughout the years. I'm not discounting that.
The talent is there. What are you talking about? You're like, I was lucky. No, it's all the talent.
I paid my dues. I put in a lot of hard work, but for me, transitioning from stand-up to television acting, a lot of it was just a combination of hard work and luck, which is what you need in this town, because it takes that one person on the other side to say yes. So you're only one job away from where I am, you know.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to do one more question because I do want to get back into a lot about the show and also Filipino, the culture and colorism that we see that happens. This question, though, first is from Karen. And I think, Nico, you touched on this a little bit about the show. For Nico, after the success of Superstore and your character, have you found it easier to break through in the industry and be considered for other roles not necessarily written for a Filipino actor?
No, it's still, it's still hard. I still tend to audition for, a lot of people see me as Mateo, and this, the bulk of my work is as Mateo. So I do still go in for a lot of, sassy gay friends. That's a lot of the auditions I get is for that. This year, I've made a choice, and I've had a talk with my agents, just sort of saying like, I'd like to branch out. I'd like to, to just creatively would like to do something else. So I've been lucky enough to do a couple of jobs where it has nothing to do with, with being the sassy gay friend. Basically, it was very much a departure from what I usually do. But it's hard. Hollywood, will always want to put you in a pigeonhole. And it takes some time and some effort and some real pushback, not only from me, but like I have to actively tell the people that represent me to keep pushing, because sometimes they will just like, well, the auditions there, do it. I'm like, no, let's do something else. So it is a constant battle that you have to fight.
And I think we also touched on this, obviously. I think, Rene, you were talking about this, and also Nico, you were saying your character Mateo, yes, this is who he is, but we don't necessarily make every episode about him being an undocumented immigrant and focusing on his sexuality or any of that stuff. But intersectionality is important. It's an important paradigm, especially given today with everything we're going through with social justice and the climate, and a lot is happening for people of color. Mateo falls into multiple categories, as we see. Why do you think the representation, specifically on this show, is key to show the intersectionality?
These are such hard Miss Universe questions that you're asking. How do we answer?
I think it goes down to representation, I think, is very important. I think you guys are doing it definitely by having not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera, where you said we don't see writers in the room that look like us when they're on camera.
Yeah. There was a writer who had written about the different types of characters, Asian characters that we have on Superstore. And again, I think that's what our show does really well, is that we have a lot of API representation in the show. Yeah. Kaliko, who plays Sandra, Nicole Sakura, who plays Cheyenne, Jerry, Chris Grace, who plays Jerry, who is Sandra's husband on the show. And all those four characters are Asian American, but they come from such different experiences. And I think that's what our show does really well, is that we have those identifiers for these characters, but we can show these sides of them that are just I think what makes the characters really compelling in the show, what entertains a lot of people about Mateo isn't the fact that he's Filipino or that he's gay, is that or that he's undocumented, is that he's sort of like this really bitchy, venomous, but lovable still character. And that's what people sort of want to see. And the fact that we're able to weave, every aspect of his identity through that lens, I think is what's great about the writing and how we proceed with the show.
Yeah, I think it's more reflective of like how we are in life. Intersectionality is something that everyone experiences. We're all three-dimensional people. We've got different identities that we, wear more heavily one day versus another. And so I think that it's nice that it's not, like Nico was saying, it's not just about that he's undocumented and Filipino. He's like got a dating life. He's got friends and family. He's got other stuff going on. And the show kind of approaches every character that way. And so I think That's just more accurate to life, which also helps the comedy and kind of makes the show feel like you're not just watching caricatures, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think, well, I'll just add to that, like, when I think about intersectionality, I think about like blind spots. And in a writer's room, like part of our work is to like make sure that we haven't blown it, you know, like we haven't misrepresented the story or like made it a point of view feel ostracized or forgotten or whatever. And so often that means us having those conversations and having those quote unquote arguments with each other. And then often that means like bringing in perspectives that aren't represented in the writer's room because of the composition of the writer's room. So we've brought in like Define American has been great for us. We brought in labor groups. We often talk to like, well, like every year we take aside from this year because of the pandemic, but like every year we've taken a field trip to like a Target and we get like a tour of the store from the manager. And we talk about like how is technology changing their lives? How is like, you know, the new robots affecting people's, you know, anxieties about their job security, things like that. And so making sure that you've done your due diligence. Obviously we're not going to be like a perfect show and we're not going to have like the perfect take on everything, but like doing our best work to reflect the conversation that we had and just represent it, you know, and the best we can is the job.
I have another question from Melissa, and this, I won't direct it to anyone specifically because we're all creatives here. So whoever wants to take this one. Melissa says, thank you so much. I feel so seen. I love that this exclusive has Pinoy representation in front and behind the screen and is so informative. Do you have any more tips or advice for up and coming filmmakers?
Heather, I think that's for you.
I was like, Heather. Yeah.
I mean, this kind of goes along to what Nico was saying too, though, about like, you know, starting out, like working retail, doing stand-up. Like, I think you just have to find a way to do what, you know, your thing, to make your own creative work. And then also find a way to pay the rent and eat food. And it does take time and persistence. And it's not, I think for any one of us, we've, you know, it's a combination of like hard work, and then getting some breaks. You know, for me, the way that I got to this directing role, you know, I was doing a lot of like online content and commercial type work, and I wanted to be in narrative comedy or, you know, work in television. And there was a program at NBC that helped female directors, you know, get their first episode of television, which is kind of like the hardest like entry point. And that was, you know, because these programs exist, because there are diversity programs that, you know, you just keep applying to, and I had work to show, that was something that you know, I was able to come up through this program. But without having done the work before, without having, you know, kind of tried every avenue you can, you just never know where you're going to get you're in. So that's, I would just recommend like keep working on your stuff, keep developing your voice, and try to get stuff seen, and then do it again. You have to be pretty persistent.
Yeah. The hustle does not stop. You keep going.
Yeah, it does not. Right. It's always there. I mean, I had a similar experience. You know, I applied and got into a diversity program for another network. And this was back in 2014 is when I had applied for that program. And, you know, at that time I was just doing stand-up. This diversity program was for actors and like comedic actors. And, you know, it was my manager who was just like, you should apply. I'm like, I am a stand-up. I'm not really an actor. I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, just apply. And then, you know, I got in, and it was through that showcase that I was seen. It's where my agent saw me, and that's how I got signed to an agency. That's how a lot of casting directors, the first movie I was in, the casting director was at that showcase and saw me. So it is about just sort of continuing, you're working on your craft and your talent and making sure that you are razor sharp, because you never know when that door's going to open for you, and just being ready when you're called up to the plate. Is that the right sports analogy? Yes.
Nailed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
As soon as you get that call, be ready. Always be ready.
Be ready. Yeah.
John has a question as far as production is concerned on the show. Has the pandemic impacted the show at all? I hope everyone is safe and healthy.
John, the pandemic has impacted the show, believe it or not.
Has it? Yes. Has it?
I mean,
really, yes.
I mean, every episode is, I don't want to think about how much money we have to spend in order to keep everyone safe, but we're very fortunate that we have a network and studio that is willing to spend that money. We shoot 6-day episodes, sometimes 7 as opposed to 5. Everything is slower. There's no writer's room. I sit and stare at a Zoom room full of faces for like 8 hours a day. It's really weird on the eyeballs. The entire process is completely different. I mean, Nico, you can probably speak a little more specifically about set life, but
yeah, well, as far as set life, it has everything is just slower because obviously we're all adhering to all the new COVID protocols. It just takes a lot of time. So there's already a lot of waiting that you do when you're working on a regular set. But now with the new COVID protocols, that the waiting has now increased tenfold. So you just have to be patient. And again, to reiterate what Rene said, we're just thankful and grateful that all those protocols and safety things are being taken so seriously. It is weird, we are also lucky that we are a show that can lean in to the pandemic and what's happening. And, some scenes we're wearing masks, some we're not, but it's great that we're able to sort of really use that in our storytelling. The one thing I will complain about is we have to wear these dog cones, essentially, that like these face shields that like clip to our neck, and it's just a clear plastic dog cone. And every dog that I've seen with a dog cone who just looks and feels so humiliated and scared, I'm like, I see you. I see you, dog. And I know how you feel. Yeah.
You understand what's going on now with these dogs.
I understand. Yes.
I want to test everyone's Filipino knowledge shortly. We're going to get to a lightning round before we wrap it up, but I wanted to get back to another question. And this question is, Nico, will you be doing any comedy specials or collaborations with other Fil-Am actors or entertainers?
I would love to. I mean, comedy special has always been part of my dream to do. It's a little different right now because we are in the pandemic, so that's just not something I can jump in and do right now. But yes, that is something I hope to accomplish once things get back to normal, because I'm certainly not going to do a Zoom comedy special. Lord. Yes, I would love to collaborate with more Filipino creators. Again, there's I can count on both hands the number of Filipinos out there right now who are really sort of like in the mix and sort of doing stuff in the industry right now. So I'm going to give all 10 of them a call soon, see if we can make something happen.
We're ready for that.
That's why we need you guys. We need all of you guys to sort of start creating and flood the market.
And again, I know we've talked about representation. We've talked about how far we've come to see people that look like us on the screen. It's definitely a lot more work to be done, like all of you have said. But I just want to wrap it up again before getting into the lightning round. Knowing how far we have come and the work that needs to go into it in addition to what we've already done, do we feel like we do see it moving and changing? Again, obviously your show represents so many different cultures and people and everything, and you get to feel at home when you watch the show. But do you see outside of this show as well that it is changing somewhat in the right direction?
Absolutely. I will say that. I was, I'll be very vague in this, but like there was a point in my career when I was writing on a television show, and there was a Filipino actor that I wanted to call out on the show as being a Filipino character on the show. And I was told by higher ups in that show that like nobody would care. It doesn't matter. So like every week I would try to pitch a joke that nodded to his Filipino-ness. And then I was spoken to and said, "Stop! This is not a thing that matters in the world of this show. So it doesn't matter." Even though I knew it would matter to all of us, right? And so if that were to be said to me, I was a very young writer. I didn't have a lot of agency in that space. So to like pick that fight and go down in that battle probably wouldn't have been the best way to serve my career. Now, if that were to be said to me today, like fires would be lit, and only because I know there's a community out there that is willing to back me up if I were to put my neck out in a situation like that. So I know that like the conversation has moved. I know that like people are aware that there needs to be met, and I know that there are artists out there that are really excited to like meet those needs. So yeah, I do think things are moving in the right direction. I do think we need to just keep on.
Yeah, I think as an audience member too, like just being able to see more representation on screen, like on Superstore, on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, there were portrayals of Filipinos that I certainly never saw growing up at all, and so that's exciting. I think, to see these things on network television or to see them on cable, like it's moving towards that. And I think that's, there's progress that has been made, which is nice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like with the same thing that Rene said, like even when Superstore first started, I would be really hesitant to sort of like, speak up about anything about my character or bring, like anything that I kind of had even like a minor gripe about with the way Mateo would say something or something about Mateo's storyline. Like, honestly, in the beginning, like I wouldn't speak up because Superstore was my big break. I was just starting out as an actor, and I certainly, I mean, whatever, y'all can judge me for this, but I was not going to rock that boat. I did not want to, like ruin this opportunity. And I've only now, like honestly, like 2 years ago, once Crazy Rich Asians happened, did I feel like empowered. And now that I'm like, oh, like I do have a voice. And, I am thankfully in a position where I am one of the series regulars of this show, and they will listen to what I have to say. I'm not making crazy demands or anything like that, but, that I just have to remind myself that I'm not the same person I was, 5 years before this started. My status in this industry has also changed, where I can use it to speak out, not only for myself, but for other people, and make sure that things that are important to my character, my community are being heard and addressed. So I wouldn't have done that, 6 years ago when the show first started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like every mention of like Tita Irma brings me so much joy. Like all of those little moments that don't necessarily like make the show, or make the narrative of the show, but they're like little inside jokes that like really mean a lot to people like me and people in the community. I think are really valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, it's good. You guys, I have to say this before the lightning round. Look, I have a picture of my grandma, Filipina, right here.
Yes. Yes, Lola.
She's watching. She's watching. So I'm happy to talk to you guys too. And then also, it's always hard to find those moments. And again, one more time for the people in the back, Nico, when you said it's like this, I waited for my moment to be able to say, hey, I've worked here. Now I can speak up, not just for myself, but for the future people coming after me as well. So thank you for using your platform for good. So who's ready for this lightning round?
Bring it.
Here we go. We answer. Whoever answers first, we'll just give you the points. There's nothing you win at the end of the day except a thank you. Congratulations. Okay, let's see. Do you say 99 Ranch or Ranch 99?
Ranch 99.
Ranch 99, right?
I'm from the Bay, so they call it Ranch 99.
Yeah, Ranch 99.
Yeah, Ranch 99. Okay. In your home, shoes on? Shoes on or shoes off?
Shoes off.
Yeah.
I'm a shoes on.
Oh,
girl. I know.
Wow.
I know. Shocking. I have nice shoes. I want to wear them.
Okay, here we go. Sharon Cuneta or Lea Salonga?
Ate Shawi. Si Ate Shawi. Ate
I say
Shawi.
Leia
On the way.
Salonga for me.
Yeah. I gotta take Leia. She's
Go.
that
Leia,
boy.
yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Philippines, so I grew up both with Leia and with Sharon Cuneta. But when I was growing up, I mean, I I actually am like a huge Sharon Cuneta fan. And growing up, I would always like act out like scenes from her movies, and which is how my mom discovered I was gay. So I was pretend to be Sharon Cuneta. So
Yeah.
Do you have any video footage of this? Because we need to have that.
Yeah, can we go to the tape?
oh yeah, I think I have one from last week.
Yes, last week. Okay, I've only been to Boracay, but do you pronounce it Palawan? Because I hear it pronounced different ways. Is it Palawan or Boracay?
Palawan.
How would you guys?
Palawan, Boracay.
Boracay. So which one would you choose?
Palawan. I went a
Palawan.
couple years ago. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I've
My
only
mom
been to
used to live in
Boracay. So.
Palawan. So. All right.
Okay. All right.
Palawan is
Here's the
great.
Yeah, it's
Beautiful.
beautiful. I mean,
Okay.
I'm sure Boracay is also very beautiful, but I haven't been.
It was beautiful. That's the only place I've been to out of those two. Okay, so here we go. This has to do with food. This is the last one. Diniguan or balut?
Dinuguan.
Yeah,
So delicious.
it's delicious.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Is that even a question? Come on now. Dinuguan all the way.
Yeah.
With
I wish I had
a side
some
of
now.
puto and a side of rice. Yeah.
Now, balut. Have you all had it though?
I've had it. Yeah.
And you're not into it,
It's
huh?
good. It's good, but it's like I'm never like, oh, I really want some balut right now. But like dinuguan, I'm like, I could really go for some dinuguan right now. It's something I crave.
Yeah.
I don't
Like
crave
today,
balut.
I could have it at.
Yes, right now, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
I think since now we're all talking food, everyone's hungry, would be the time to wrap it up and say thank you guys so much. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and for all of your questions. This is really fun, you guys. It's going to be a beautiful weekend now because we got to have this moment. And make sure everybody tunes in. Superstore is returning Thursday, October 29th on NBC. So make sure you tune in. Now do I say salamat?
Salamat.
Salamat.
Salamat po.
Yes. Thank you guys so much.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, NBC.
Thanks, guys.